5 years after buying a stranger a meal on a stormy night, Nia Laurent's struggling non-profit receives a mysterious $750K donation just as it's about to shut down. But when the donor resurfaces, so does danger. The receipt was love. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and her bank account was hovering dangerously close to zero. She'd spent her last $20 on a simple dinner, and this coffee that she was making last as long as possible so she could stay out of her noisy dorm room. The rain pounded against the windows of Bayou Brews, a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of New Orleans. A young man walked in, soaked from the rain, his backpack torn at one strap. Water dripped from his dark hair onto his worn jacket. His face was drawn with dark circles under his eyes that told a story of sleepless nights. It was nearly midnight, and Nia Laurent was the only customer left, her textbooks and sketch pads spread across the table as she nursed what was left of her lukewarm coffee. At 23, Nia was exhausted. Her psychology final was tomorrow. She had 2 design projects due by the end of the week. The bell above the door jingled, pulling Nia's attention away from her notes. Marge, the night waitress, greeted him with the same warm smile she gave everyone. "Awful night to be out, honey. What can I get you?" "You don't have to do that." The young man stared at the menu board for a long moment. They sat at separate tables, neither speaking. When he finished, he gathered his things and stopped at her table. His hands went to his pockets, patting them as if searching for something. Nia recognized that move. She'd done it herself many times, the universal gesture of someone checking for money they already knew wasn't there. "Nothing," he said quietly. "Sorry to bother you." He turned to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The man paused, looking back at her with weary eyes. "I'm fine." We helped 17 people, and that's 17 lives that might be a little better tonight. What had started as her graduate school project had grown into her life's work. For 3 years, they'd operated on a shoestring budget, cobbling together grant money and donations to keep the vans running. "Are you hungry?" Tears burned behind her eyelids, but she refused to let them fall. Crying wouldn't pay the bills or fuel the vans, or compensate the therapists who had already volunteered far more hours than she had any right to ask for. Nia didn't think. She just acted. "Wait," she called out. He hesitated, pride battling with need on his face. Nia stood up, grabbing her debit card from the table. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Her project was funded. "Zoe, come look at this." Not just funded, they could expand. Hire real staff, reach more people. "I'll send a text in the morning. We might need to." Zoe pulled Nia into a hug. "I always told you this project was special." Zoe, like someone who knew her. But who in her life had that kind of money? They were ecstatic, and plans for expansion began immediately. 2 more vans, real salaries for the therapists. She called the bank, but they insisted they couldn't reveal any information about the donor. She reached out to everyone she knew with means, but no one admitted to the generosity. The room was filled with children and teens, their faces intent as they painted and drew, expressing feelings they sometimes couldn't put into words. Art supplies that weren't donated leftovers or bought from dollar stores. A young girl named Desiree held up a vibrant painting of a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. "Regroup." His clothes were simple but obviously expensive, dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. There was something familiar about him, but Nia couldn't place it. She knew exactly how much was left in her account, just enough for this one meal and maybe a bus ride tomorrow. She glanced toward the door and saw a man standing there, observing the session. But something in his eyes reminded her of herself 2 years ago, when her scholarship money had been delayed and she'd gone 3 days without a proper meal. "I've got it," she told Marge, handing over her card. "Whatever he wants." The young man shook his head. "I want to," Nia insisted. "Everyone needs help sometimes." She kept thinking about the donor. When she looked back a moment later, Julian was gone. Who would give so much money to her little project? "Are you interested in volunteering? We can always use more help." She'd applied for grants, of course, but nothing this substantial. And those always came with recognition, with strings attached. After a moment's hesitation, He ordered a bowl of gumbo and coffee. "I've been following your work for a while now. Was worried when I heard you might have to shut down. New Orleans is a small town in some ways." "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I'll remember this." He was quiet but observant, helping where needed and often bringing supplies or food for everyone. The kids loved him, especially the boys who rarely had positive male role models in their lives. No one ever asked how I was feeling or if I needed to talk. Before Nia could respond, he was gone, back into the stormy night. Nia thought about him occasionally over the next few weeks, hoping he was okay. But soon the demands of finishing her degree pushed the memory to the back of her mind. 5 years later, Nia stood in front of the last remaining mobile wellness van in her fleet, trying not to show her disappointment to her small team of volunteers. The soaked young man with the torn backpack and the hungry eyes. The stranger she'd bought dinner for when she barely had enough for herself. "Good work today, everyone," she said, forcing a smile. At 28, Nia had poured everything into her dream, a mobile wellness initiative that brought mental health services and art therapy to underserved communities throughout New Orleans. But now the money had run out. This was their last day of operation unless a miracle happened. "Same time tomorrow?" asked Marcus, her most dedicated volunteer therapist. Nia hesitated. Once everyone had gone, Nia climbed into the driver's seat of the van and let her head fall against the steering wheel. "You were kind to me when I needed it most, when I had nothing." Her phone chimed with a text from her roommate Zoe. "Mail came. There's something official looking for you." It was more than that, much more. 5 years ago, she'd helped a stranger out of simple human kindness. "Wait, so this gorgeous, apparently loaded guy just shows up out of nowhere because you bought him dinner 5 years ago? Girl, that's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the start of a Lifetime movie where I yell at you not to go in the basement." Now that stranger had changed her life with an act of generosity she could hardly comprehend. "He's not like that. He's been hanging around your therapy sessions like a lovesick puppy. He's interested in you, Nia." The trifecta. Zoe flopped onto their couch. "So what are you going to do?" "He's gentle. What would he expect in return? Quiet. There's a sadness in him." He glanced at his watch. "Somewhere people could come any time, not just when the vans are in their neighborhood." "I have to go, but I'll see you tomorrow." 20 minutes later, Nia was sitting at her kitchen table, staring at an envelope from Crescent City Bank. She tore it open, expecting another overdraft notice. "You don't even know my vision. We just met, or re-met, I guess." Instead, she found a letter that made her heart stop. The articles you've, "Dear Ms. Laurent, we are pleased to inform you that an anonymous donor has established a fund for your organization, Healing Wheels, in the amount of $750,000 to be distributed over 5 years." Nia read the letter 3 times, certain there had been some mistake. This had to be meant for someone else, but there it was in black and white. She shouted, her hands shaking. Zoe rushed in from the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Nia said, laughing through the tears that were finally falling. "Everything's right. Someone funded Healing Wheels. For 5 years. Zoe grabbed the letter, her eyes widening as she read. "Oh my God, Nia, who would do this?" "I don't know. It says anonymous donor." "Well, somebody knows who you are and believes in what you're doing." That night, Nia couldn't sleep. This felt personal. The next morning, Nia called everyone on her team with the news. Over the next few weeks, Nia tried to discover the identity of her benefactor. It was a mystery that nagged at her, even as she threw herself into rebuilding and expanding Healing Wheels. 1 month after receiving the letter, Nia was supervising an art therapy session at a community center in the 9th Ward. "Ms. Nia, look at my picture." "That's beautiful, Desiree. Tell me about it." As Desiree explained her artwork, Nia felt someone watching her. He was handsome, with warm brown skin and close-cropped hair. When their eyes met, he smiled. "Can I help you?" Nia asked, approaching him. "Just watching," he said. "This is amazing work you're doing." His voice triggered something in her memory, but she still couldn't place him. "Thanks, maybe." He extended his hand. "I'm Julian Reyes." Nia shook his hand, still trying to figure out why he seemed familiar. Nia Laurent. Nice to meet you. I know who you are, he said with a small smile. Your reputation precedes you. Before she could ask what he meant, Desiree called for her again and Nia had to turn away. He returned the next day, this time bringing coffee for all the volunteers. So, what brings you to Healing Wheels? Nia asked as they took a break outside. Are you interested in art therapy? Julian looked out at the neighborhood, his expression thoughtful. I grew up not far from here, didn't have much. That's why we started this, Nia said. Everyone deserves that kind of support. Julian nodded. Nia raised an eyebrow. How did you know about that? We didn't exactly advertise our financial troubles. He shrugged. There was something he wasn't saying, and Nia was about to press him when Marcus called her inside to help with the situation. Over the next week, Julian became a regular presence at Healing Wheels events. Nia found herself looking forward to seeing him, even as his mysterious appearance in her life continued to puzzle her. One evening, as they were cleaning up after a particularly successful session, Julian handed her a small paper bag. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a blueberry muffin from Bayou Brews, the cafe where she'd been studying that rainy night 5 years ago. Nia looked up at Julian, really seeing him for the first time. It was you, she whispered. That night at the cafe. Julian smiled, his eyes warm. Told you I'd remember. Nia's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't even known existed. The donation, well, was that you? He didn't answer directly. It was just a meal, Nia said, stunned. Julian shook his head. Nia nodded, still trying to process what she'd just learned. As Julian walked away, Nia sat down on the steps of the community center, the muffin still in her hand. What kind of person remembered a small kindness for 5 years? And what kind of person had the means to make such an enormous donation? Who was Julian Reyes, really? And why did her heart beat faster every time he smiled at her? Zoe's eyes widened as Nia told her the story later that night. Nia laughed despite herself. Rich, handsome, and wounded. Do? Nothing. He funded the project, which is amazing, but that doesn't mean anything else. Oh, come on. The man tracked you down after 5 years. He remembers the exact cafe where you met. Nia shook her head. He's grateful, that's all. $750,000 grateful? I don't think so. Nia didn't know what to think. Julian's generosity overwhelmed her, but she'd learned early in life that nothing came without strings attached. The next day, Julian arrived at their morning session with architectural plans. What's this? Nia asked, looking at the blueprints he'd spread across a table. I've been thinking, the mobile units are great, but what if you had a permanent space too? Nia stared at the plans. It was a beautiful building with therapy rooms, art studios, community spaces, even living quarters for people in crisis. Julian, this would cost millions. He met her eyes steadily. I know. Are you saying you want to fund this too? I'm saying I want to help you realize your vision, whatever that takes. Nia felt a flash of anger. I've been following your work for years, Nia. Published, the interviews you've given. I know what you're trying to do here. Why? The question burst from her. Why me? Why this? Julian was quiet for a moment, his eyes far away. The night we met, I was at my lowest point. I'd been sleeping in shelters for weeks. My startup had failed, I'd been robbed, I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Nia's anger faded as she listened. To be seen as a person, not a problem. To be treated with dignity when I felt worthless. I was ready to give up, he continued, really give up. And then a stranger, a student who clearly didn't have much herself, bought me dinner. No questions asked, no judgment, just kindness. He looked at her, his eyes intense. Do you know what that meant to me? Nia swallowed hard. I had no idea. Got an interview, got the job, saved enough to rent a room, started building my network. 2 years later, I launched another startup. This one worked. How could you? But I promised myself that if I ever got on my feet, I'd find you and thank you properly. What happened after that night? So the money is a thank you. Julian shook his head. The money is an investment in someone who genuinely cares about others, in work that matters. Nia studied him, trying to reconcile the successful man before her with the desperate stranger from 5 years ago. I got lucky. I applied for a coding job the next day. Had to use the public library computer. Worked how well? Nia asked, glancing at the architectural plans that would cost millions. Julian smiled slightly. Well enough. About his journey from homeless to wealthy, about the fact that he'd searched for her, remembered her, wanted to help her. There's more I want to talk to you about. Who was Julian Reyes, really? What did he want from her? And why did she feel like her life was about to change even more dramatically than it already had? And something else, something that made her pulse quicken when he stood close to her like this. Before they could talk further, Marcus called Nia over to meet a new family who'd just arrived. The conversation with Julian would have to wait. That evening, as Nia was locking up the van, Julian appeared beside her. Not that this was a date, she reminded herself as she tried on a third outfit. This was a business meeting, a chance to learn more about her mysterious benefactor. Have dinner with me tomorrow, he said. Nia hesitated. Her feelings about Julian were complicated. Gratitude for his generosity, curiosity about his past. She wondered what he thought of it as she locked the door behind her and walked down the steps. Okay, she said finally, but I'm buying. Julian laughed, a rich, warm sound that made her smile in response. Deal. As he walked her to her car, their hands brushed, neither pulled away. His smile when he saw her made her heart skip. Good night, Nia, he said softly. Good night, Julian. The maitre d' greeted Julian by name and led them to a private table overlooking the river. Driving home, Nia couldn't stop thinking about him and about the way her name sounded when he said it. Reyes. She pulled into her driveway, her mind spinning with questions. Little did she know that the answers would test everything she believed about trust, forgiveness, and the power of a single act of kindness. I invested in the restaurant when they were starting out. Chef Bernard hasn't forgotten. My company, Reyes Technologies, develops software for healthcare systems. But yes, I also invest in projects I believe in. He held her gaze. People I believe in. Nia spent more time getting ready for dinner with Julian than she had for any date in years. She finally settled on a simple emerald green dress that Zoe had insisted she buy last year, claiming the color made her brown skin glow. He listened intently to her answers, occasionally making suggestions that showed he truly understood her mission. Well, don't you look nice? Zoe said, leaning against the bathroom doorframe as Nia applied a touch of lipstick. For a business meeting. We didn't know that's what it was for a long time. My parents just thought he was troubled. Difficult. She paused, old pain surfacing. By the time he got diagnosed, he was already self-medicating with street drugs. It was too late. He died of an overdose when I was 15. Nia shot her a look. It is a business meeting. Most people hear mental health for low-income communities and their eyes glaze over. But you get it. If we'd had access to proper mental health care, if the stigma hadn't kept my parents from seeking help, it's what happened, made me who I am. He took a sip of his wine. What about you? What made you choose this path? And why you were kind to a stranger that night? You see people, Nia, really see them. That's why you're wearing the good perfume. How did you go from homeless to successful entrepreneur in just 5 years? A year in, I developed a scheduling program that caught the attention of my boss. He helped me patent it and introduced me to some investors. My father had left years before. No other family stepped up. The donation, the building plans, all of it. What do you want from me? $750,000 is a lot of money to give with no expectations. I spent 2 years in foster care, then aged out of the system. I want you to let yourself be helped for once instead of always being the one doing the helping. She'd spent so long being strong, being the support for everyone else, that accepting help felt like weakness. Nothing, I don't want anything from you. This was no longer just about a donation or a thank you for a long-ago kindness. This was about two people who recognized something in each other, a shared understanding, a mutual respect, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something more. Before Nia could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Julian. "I'm downstairs." But a lifetime of disappointments had taught her to be cautious. Her small house was in a modest neighborhood, a far cry from wherever Julian must live now. "I'm really sorry, but I need to go. There's an issue with one of our systems." Julian stood beside a sleek black car, dressed in dark pants and a crisp white shirt. The possibility that people could be good without wanting something in return. "For me." "Good night, Nia. For the people who need what you're creating." But I had something to prove, to myself, to everyone who'd written me off. He stepped away from the table, speaking in low, urgent tones. She was so distracted that she didn't notice the woman sitting on the steps until she spoke. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." Nia felt suddenly shy, which was ridiculous. She was never shy. "Where are we going?" She wore an expensive-looking suit and a disapproving expression. "I thought we'd try Martins. Is that okay?" "I believe you know my godson, Julian Reyes." Nia's eyebrows shot up. Martins was one of the most exclusive restaurants in New Orleans, with a months-long waiting list. "How did you get a reservation?" Julian opened the car door for her. "I know people." The restaurant was everything Nia had heard. Elegant without being stuffy, with jazz playing softly, and the mouth-watering smells of Creole cuisine filling the air. "You come here often?" Nia asked as they settled in. "I'll be direct, Ms. Laurent. I want you to stop seeing Julian." "When I have someone special to bring," Julian replied, his eyes on hers. "His company is on the verge of a major expansion. He doesn't need distractions. Take it and end whatever this is with Julian. It's a fair offer." A waiter appeared with champagne. "Compliments of the chef, mister. He belongs in our world, not yours." Victoria waved a hand dismissively. "And now you're having intimate dinners at Martins." "You really do know people," Nia said after the waiter departed. "Now. And take your money with you." Julian smiled slightly. Victoria's gaze was cold. Julian has always had a soft heart. It makes him vulnerable to people who want to take advantage of his generosity. "I hate to do this, but I need to go straight to the office. Can I call you a car?" "Is that what you do?" "Invest in businesses." Among other things, the conversation flowed easily through dinner. Julian asked questions about healing wheels, how she'd started it, what her vision was for the future. "You know," Nia said as they shared a dessert. "I lived it," Julian said quietly. "After my mom died when I was 16, there was no one." "I'm so sorry," Nia said. Julian shrugged. Nia hesitated. She rarely shared her personal story with anyone, but something about Julian made her want to open up. "My older brother, Andre, had schizophrenia." Julian reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm, comforting. "I always wondered," Nia continued, "what would have happened if someone had recognized the signs earlier. So you created what your brother needed." Nia nodded. "I want to catch the Andres of the world before they're lost." They sat in silence for a moment, connected by shared pain and purpose. "Now I understand even better why your work matters so much," Julian said finally. The intensity in his eyes made her look away. "Tell me more about your company," she said, changing the subject. Julian accepted the shift in conversation gracefully. "After I got that first coding job, I worked 16-hour days, lived on ramen and ambition, saved every penny." "Just like that?" Nia couldn't hide her skepticism. Julian laughed. "Not just like that. There were plenty of setbacks, plenty of times I nearly gave up." "And to me?" Nia asked softly. Julian's expression grew serious. "I never forgot you, Nia. Even before I knew your name, you represented something important to me. Hope, kindness." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Nia. "Julian, I need to ask you something directly." "Anything." "Why are you really doing this?" Julian looked surprised by the question. "Everyone wants something." "I want to help you help others, that's all." Nia shook her head. Julian was quiet for a moment. "You're right, I do have one expectation." He leaned forward. His words hit home in a way Nia wasn't prepared for. I don't know if I can do that, she admitted. Try, Julian said simply. Their eyes held, and Nia felt something shift between them. The moment was broken when Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. I'm sorry, I need to take this. Work emergency. When he returned, his expression was troubled. Of course, Nia said, trying to hide her disappointment. I understand. Outside, Julian handed his keys to the valet and turned to Nia. I had a wonderful time tonight. Me too. Thank you for dinner. I thought you were buying, he teased. Nia laughed. Next time, I'm going to hold you to that. Julian's smile faded as he checked his phone again. That's not necessary. I can call a ride. Julian insisted on waiting until her car arrived. Before she got in, he took her hand and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. The touch of his lips on her skin sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. The next morning, Nia arrived at the community center early, her mind still on Julian and their dinner. Are you Nia Laurent? Nia looked up to see an elegant woman in her 50s, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. Yes, I'm Nia. Can I help you? The woman stood, her posture rigid. My name is Victoria Caldwell. Nia's confusion must have shown on her face because Victoria's frown deepened. I see he hasn't mentioned me. How typical. She adjusted her designer handbag on her arm. May we speak privately? Curious and a little uneasy, Nia unlocked the community center and led Victoria inside. What's this about? Victoria looked around the simple space with barely concealed disdain before turning her attention back to Nia. Nia blinked in surprise. Excuse me. Julian has a bright future ahead of him. Distractions, Nia repeated, her voice flat. Is that what you think I am? I think you're a woman who saw an opportunity and took it. Anger flared in Nia's chest. You don't know anything about me or my relationship with Julian. I know he's donated an obscene amount of money to your little project. The realization that this woman had been having Julian followed sent a chill through Nia. I think you should leave. Victoria pulled an envelope from her bag and held it out. Inside is a check for $1 million. Nia stared at the envelope, speechless with shock and rage. Julian may think he's in love with some fantasy version of you, Victoria continued, but I assure you it won't last. Nia found her voice. Get out. Victoria's lips thinned. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was letting you through the door. Julian is a grown man who can make his own decisions. You don't know him like I do, Victoria said, returning the envelope to her bag. Julian isn't who you think he is. He's not who he pretends to be. What's that supposed to mean? Then decide if he's really the saint you think he is. But Victoria was already walking to the door. Ask him about San Francisco, she said over her shoulder. Ask him about what happened at Technovate. She left, the door slamming behind her. Who was this woman to Julian? And what did she mean about San Francisco? Nia stood in the empty room, trembling with anger and confusion. I wanted to apologize again for leaving so abruptly last night. Before she could process the confrontation, her phone rang. It was Julian. Good morning, he said, his voice warm. Nia hesitated, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. It's fine. Is everything okay with work? All fixed. Listen, I was wondering if you'd like to see my place tonight. I could cook dinner for us. The invitation surprised her. You cook? Julian laughed. I have many hidden talents. Nia thought about Victoria's warning. Ask him about San Francisco. Ask him about what happened at Technovat. Julian, does the name Victoria Caldwell mean anything to you? The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. Offered me $1 million to stop seeing you. How do you know Victoria? Julian finally asked, his tone carefully neutral. She paid me a visit this morning. What time should I come? Not something I want to discuss over the phone. The relief in his voice was palpable. And Nia, don't let Victoria get to you. She means well, but she doesn't understand. It was beautifully decorated but not ostentatious. Comfortable leather furniture, original local artwork on the walls, shelves filled with books. Julian asked, leading her into the open-plan kitchen where something delicious was simmering on the stove. Us. But her curiosity, and if she was honest, her growing feelings for him, won out. Come to dinner tonight, and I'll tell you everything, I promise. How he'd worked odd jobs and slept where he could until the night they met. She's been like a mother to me since I lost my own. All I wanted after that was a place that felt like home. I'd buy one coffee and stretch it out for hours while I used their Wi-Fi to apply for jobs. But that night, I'd spent my last dollar on bus fare. He was a good cook and an even better storyteller, making her laugh with tales of his early coding disasters. Another long pause. I'm so sorry, Nia. Victoria is protective. She said I should ask you about San Francisco. He set down his fork and took a deep breath. And then I discovered something troubling in the code, a flaw that could potentially cause the system to crash during critical care scenarios. 3 years ago, I was part of a team developing medical scheduling software at a company called Technovate in San Francisco. It was cutting-edge stuff, using AI to optimize hospital staffing and patient care. When I threatened to go to the regulatory board, he offered me a substantial bribe to keep quiet. About Technovate. The next morning, I got a call for an interview at Data Sync. Apparently, they were desperate for someone with my skill set. I started the next day. I wasn't satisfied with that answer, so I went over his head to the CEO, Martin Graves. I was so nervous, but something about your kindness gave me confidence. Like if one person could see value in me, maybe others could too. And started Reyes Technologies here. No investors, no partners, just me. Why is Victoria still interfering in your life? She got me my job at Technovat, put her reputation on the line for me. Julian's voice was heavy with old pain. When I blew the whistle, she saw it as a betrayal. Julian reached across the table and took Nia's hand. She doesn't understand that I found something, someone more valuable than any business deal or IPO. I know this is fast. I know there's still so much we don't know about each other. But I want the chance to see where this could go, if you do too. Not just of the company, but of her. Julian swirled the wine in his glass, not meeting Nia's eyes. I think I started falling 5 years ago when you showed kindness to a stranger, but another part, a growing part, wanted to lean into this connection that felt both new and familiar at the same time, and every day since I found you again has only made me more certain. That's not normal. That's not something I know how to deal with. Julian brushed a strand of hair from Nia's face, his touch gentle. Victoria was an early investor in Technovate. She lost millions when the stock crashed. The kiss was sweet and tentative at first, then deeper as Julian's arms went around her, pulling her closer. The IPO was delayed. Technovate stock tanked. Graves and several executives faced criminal charges. What did she mean? Julian sighed heavily. It's complicated. By the time Julian walked her to her car, Nia felt more at ease. Julian's confession about San Francisco had only made her admire him more. Was there more to the story than Julian had shared? And would Victoria's disapproval create problems for them and for Healing Wheels going forward? He'd sacrificed his career for his principles, a choice that couldn't have been easy. Nia wavered, unsure if she wanted to get further entangled in whatever drama surrounded Julian. But she's your godmother. I know what matters and what doesn't. Surely she understood you were trying to protect patients. Text me your address, she said. Whatever came next, she was no longer just a bystander in this story. She was all in. Her meeting with Nia Laurent had not gone as planned. The girl had more backbone than Victoria had expected. 7. Julian has obviously convinced her he's some kind of hero. And she's already warned Julian that I approached her. The merger can't go forward with Julian in the picture. He'll ask too many questions, dig too deep. Us. The word hung in the air between them, full of possibilities and questions. I'll see you at 7, Nia said, and ended the call. Julian lived in a renovated warehouse in the Arts District, a spacious loft with high ceilings and huge windows overlooking the city, and Julian had made his choice in San Francisco. This is lovely, Nia said as Julian took her coat. Not what I expected. What did you expect? By morning, the first phase of their plan would be in motion. I don't know. Something showier, I guess. Given your success. Julian stirred whatever was in the pot. I lived in a shelter for 6 months, Nia. During the day, they worked side by side, expanding healing wheels. Julian's business expertise proved invaluable as they hired staff, purchased 2 new vans, and began preliminary discussions about the permanent center. But more often at hole-in-the-wall places Nia loved, where the food was amazing and the atmosphere unpretentious. Julian hadn't said those words again since their dinner at his loft, giving her space to sort through her own feelings, but his actions spoke volumes. As he cooked, Julian told stories about his early days in New Orleans, how he'd arrived with nothing but a backpack of clothes and a dream of starting fresh. And I'd like to introduce you to some people who might be interested in supporting healing. But Julian won them over with his genuine interest in their lives and his obvious adoration of Nia. That coffee shop was my office during the day, he explained as they sat down to eat. And then what happened? After I bought you dinner, Julian's eyes softened at the memory. I went back to the shelter feeling like maybe things would get better. And they hired you. On the spot. It's almost disgusting how in love with you he is. As they ate, Nia found herself relaxing, enjoying Julian's company. But she hadn't forgotten Victoria's warning. Julian, she said when there was a lull in conversation, you promised to tell me about San Francisco, about Technovate. Julian's expression grew serious. He got up and poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to Nia. The company was about to go public. Billions were at stake. That sounds dangerous, Nia said. Julian nodded grimly. It was. I brought it to my supervisor's attention, but he brushed it off, said it would be fixed after the IPO. Julian's expression darkened. Graves made it clear that delaying the IPO to fix the code wasn't an option. What did you do? I refused. Then I resigned and reported the issue to the authorities. You did the right thing, Nia said firmly. Not everyone saw it that way. I was blacklisted in Silicon Valley, called a traitor, a saboteur. Julian finally looked up. Nia was confused. Victoria and my mother were best friends in college. After my mother died, Victoria felt obligated to look out for me. Is that why you came back to New Orleans? Julian nodded. I needed a fresh start, again. I took what was left of my savings. And now you're successful, Nia said. Because she thinks she knows what's best for me. Always has. The intensity in his eyes made Nia's breath catch. Julian, I'm falling in love with you, Nia, he said quietly. Nia didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to run from the intensity of his feelings, from the complications his wealth and his past brought with them. You don't have to say anything, Julian continued when she remained silent. Nia took a deep breath. I do. But Julian, your godmother offered me $1 million to walk away from you today. Victoria will come around eventually, once she sees how happy you make me. And if she doesn't? Julian's expression hardened. Then that's her loss. I've built my life twice now, Nia. The certainty in his voice reassured her. They finished dinner talking about lighter things, favorite books, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Thank you for tonight, she said, for being honest about San Francisco. No more secrets, Julian promised. From now on, ask me anything, and I'll tell you the truth. They stood close in the cool night air, neither wanting the evening to end. Can I kiss you? He asked softly. Instead of answering, Nia rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I should go, Nia whispered, though she made no move to step away. Julian nodded, pressing his forehead to hers. I'll see you tomorrow? Tomorrow, she agreed. As she drove home, Nia's mind was a whirl of emotions, but Victoria's warnings still nagged at her. One thing was clear, what had started as gratitude on Julian's part and curiosity on hers was rapidly becoming something much deeper, much more complicated and much more thrilling. Nia touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of Julian's kiss. Victoria Caldwell sat in her hotel suite, a glass of scotch in her hand, staring at the night skyline of New Orleans. Her phone rang, and she answered without checking the caller ID. Only one person would be calling at this hour. "Well?" a male voice demanded. "She refused the money," Victoria said, taking a sip of her drink. A curse came through the line. "This complicates things. I told you bribing her wouldn't work. Did you mention San Francisco?" "I planted the seed," Victoria said, "but I doubt it will change anything. She seems quite taken with him." "We need to move quickly," the voice said. Victoria sighed. "What do you propose?" "Plan B. It's time to remind Julian who he really is, and show Ms. Laurent as well." "Are you sure that's necessary? It seems extreme." $7 billion is at stake, Victoria. How extreme are you willing to get for that kind of money? Victoria swirled the amber liquid in her glass, considering. What exactly did you have in mind? As her caller outlined the plan, Victoria's expression hardened. It was ruthless, potentially devastating to Julian, but business was business. Now he would have to live with the consequences. "I'll take care of it," she said finally, and ended the call. Setting down her glass, Victoria opened her laptop and began typing an email, and Nia Laurent would learn exactly who Julian Reyes really was. Over the next 2 weeks, Nia and Julian fell into a comfortable rhythm. In the evenings, they explored New Orleans together, sometimes at upscale restaurants where Julian was greeted by name. Nia introduced Julian to her small circle of friends, who were initially skeptical of the wealthy businessman who had appeared so suddenly in her life. "He looks at you like you hung the moon," Zoe told Nia after a dinner party at their house. Nia laughed, but her heart warmed at the observation. One evening, Julian invited Nia to a charity gala supporting children's education. "It's for a good cause," he said. "Wheels?" Nia hesitated. She'd never been comfortable in high society settings where she often felt judged for her modest background. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that." "We could go shopping," Julian suggested. "I can't let you buy me a dress." Julian smiled. "You're still having trouble accepting help, aren't you?" "Accepting a dress for a gala where you'll be networking for your own organization isn't going to change that." Julian had an eye for style and insisted on a stunning sapphire blue gown that made Nia gasp when she saw herself in the mirror. Nia sighed. "It's not that. I don't want to become dependent on you for money or anything else." Julian's expression grew serious. "Nia, you're the most independent person I know." In the end, Nia agreed, and they spent a delightful afternoon visiting boutiques in the French Quarter. As they entered, Nia felt a moment of panic at the sea of unfamiliar faces, most wearing jewelry that cost more than her annual budget for healing wheels. Wheels. But it was worth it for healing wheels. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, and the admiration in his eyes when he saw her in the blue gown made Nia blush. "Have I told you lately how extraordinary you are?" "Nia Laurent, you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known." "You look beautiful," he said, standing behind her in the fitting room, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. By midnight, she had 5 solid commitments for additional funding and invitations to speak at several influential organizations. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Nia felt a rush of emotion so intense it almost frightened her. She was reviewing donor information when Marcus burst through the door, his face ashen. For once, all her worries about the project, about money, about the future seemed distant and manageable. She was falling in love with Julian Reyes, had perhaps already fallen, and the realization both thrilled and terrified her. The night of the gala, Julian picked her up in a limousine. "I'm the luckiest man in New Orleans tonight," he said, kissing her hand. The gala was held at the historic Roosevelt Hotel, its grand ballroom transformed into a glittering wonderland of lights and flowers. It quoted anonymous sources close to the investigation, alleging that Julian had a history of financial impropriety dating back to his time at Technovate in San Francisco. "Just be yourself. These people need you more than you need them." She sent a text. "Have you seen the news? Are you okay? Call me." But her mind kept returning to the accusations against Julian. Could there be any truth to them? She refused to believe it. Julian had been nothing but transparent with her. This had to be some kind of setup. Had she been so blinded by her feelings that she'd missed warning signs? Unknown number. She answered quickly, hoping it was Julian. Her mind immediately went to Victoria Caldwell and her mysterious phone call. "I was hoping to get your comment on the allegations against Julian Reyes and how they might affect your organization." Julian squeezed her hand reassuringly. He was the one who exposed wrongdoing. Within minutes, her phone began ringing again. More reporters, no doubt. She turned it off. Throughout the evening, Julian introduced Nia to a carefully selected group of potential donors, people he knew would appreciate her vision and passion. Local news is reporting that some of his recent donations, including the one to Healing Wheels, are being examined as possible money laundering operations. "You were amazing," Julian said as they slow danced to the jazz quartet playing in the corner. "Everyone loved you. Come alone." He wore an expensive suit and had the polished look of a corporate executive. "I know the truth about Julian." "I was terrified," Nia admitted. "Why is he being investigated?" "Because powerful people want him out of the way. The same people who tried to destroy him after Technovati." Julian pulled her closer. "Not in the last hour," Nia teased. "An unforgivable oversight." Julian's eyes were warm with affection. Reporters milled around the entrance, cameras at the ready. "The one who went to prison because of Julian's whistleblowing?" "Since his release, he's been rebuilding his empire through shell companies and proxies, and he's never forgotten what Julian did to him. There was no way she could get in without being seen. Too honest for his own good, in fact. I knew about the code flaw Julian reported, and I did nothing. Why give this to me? Why not go to the authorities? I was afraid of losing my job, my stock options. Your organization helps vulnerable people. You have a good reputation. If you speak out for Julian, people will listen. But you have something Graves can't control. Have you spoken to Julian? Is he okay?" "That includes you and Healing Wheels." He met Nia's eyes. Julian was the only one with the courage to stand up to Graves, and he paid dearly for it. Julian still hadn't contacted her, and the news reports were getting worse with additional allegations surfacing hourly, for his safety and yours. Quan stood up. "Use the information on that drive carefully, Ms. Laurent. Graves is dangerous when cornered." If Quan was telling the truth, Julian was the victim of a sophisticated revenge plot. But if he was lying, if the allegations had any merit, then she and Healing Wheels were already compromised by association. But Julian would never sell to him willingly, not after what happened at Technovate. So Graves had concocted this elaborate scheme to force Julian out of his own company, tanking its value in the process so he could acquire it cheaply. She started with the emails, finding a thread between Victoria Caldwell and someone identified only as MG, discussing their plan to neutralize Julian before the merger. The allegations of money laundering through charitable donations were designed to isolate Julian, cutting him off from allies like Nia. She decided to go to his loft. If anyone knew what was happening, it would be him. The question was, what should she do with it? As they swayed to the music, Nia rested her head on Julian's shoulder, allowing herself to fully embrace the happiness of the moment. Wait, would he walk away from someone who needed help, or would he fight for what he believed was right? "Ms. Laurent, I should inform you that any evidence related to this case should be turned over to authorities immediately. Withholding evidence could result in charges of obstruction. This is Detective Robert Jackson with the Financial Crimes Division. But it would be in your best interest to cooperate fully. We'd like you to come in for questioning regarding your relationship with Julian Reyes and the donation to your organization." "How do I know I can trust you? This could all be part of the setup, but it could also be someone with information about Julian. She had to risk it." She didn't notice Victoria Caldwell watching them from across the room, her expression cold as she spoke into her phone. Within an hour, she was sitting in the office of Eleanor Washington, a formidable attorney specializing in corporate law. And because what's happening to Julian isn't right. Quan pulled a thumb drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. The detective's warning had been clear. If she had evidence, she needed to hand it over. But to whom? If Quan was right and Graves had influence with authorities, giving them the drive might accomplish nothing. Or worse, alert Graves that his plot had been discovered. This contains evidence that proves the allegations against Julian are false. Financial records, Emails between Graves and Victoria Caldwell planning this smear campaign, even the original Technovate code that proves Julian was telling the truth back then. She scanned the room, not sure who she was looking for, when a man in the corner raised his hand slightly. The next morning, Nia was at the Healing Wheels office early, still riding the high of the previous evening's success. "Nia, have you seen the news?" "No, what's happened?" Marcus handed her his tablet, open to a financial news site. The headline made her blood run cold. Tech entrepreneur Julian Reyes under investigation for fraud. The article claimed that Julian had falsified credentials and financial records to secure initial funding for Reyes Technologies. "This can't be right," Nia said, her voice shaking. "Julian was a whistleblower at Technovate." "There's more," Marcus said grimly. Nia felt the room spin. This had to be a mistake, or worse, a deliberate attack. She tried calling Julian, but the call went straight to voicemail. An hour passed with no response. Then 2. Nia tried to focus on work. No. Around noon, her phone rang. "Nia Laurent?" The voice was unfamiliar, male. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is David Chen. I'm a reporter with the Times-Picayune." Nia's grip tightened on the phone. "I have no comment at this time." "Ms. Laurent, our sources indicate that Reyes donated a substantial sum to Healing Wheels just weeks before these allegations surfaced. Were you aware of any—" Nia ended the call, her hand trembling. By late afternoon, Nia was frantic with worry. When she arrived at his building, she was shocked to see news vans parked outside. As she sat in her car, trying to decide what to do, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Café des Gars." Nia stared at the message. It could be a trap, a reporter trying to get a statement. Café des Gars was nearly empty when Nia arrived 30 minutes later. He was in his 40s, Asian American, with silver streaking his dark hair. "Ms. Laurent," he said as she approached. "Thank you for coming. I'm Michael Kwan." The name rang a bell. "You worked at Technovate," Nia said, suddenly remembering an article she'd read about Julian's whistleblowing case. Kwan nodded. "I was Chief Technology Officer. Please, sit down." Nia sat across from him, wary but desperate for information. "You said you know the truth about Julian. What's happening?" Kwan sighed heavily. "Victoria Caldwell?" "Victoria is just a pawn. The real power behind this is Martin Graves, Technovate's former CEO." Nia frowned. He served 18 months of a 5-year sentence, got out early for good behavior. Kwan's mouth twisted bitterly. "But these fraud allegations are completely fabricated," Kwan said firmly. "Julian Reyes is one of the most honest people I've ever worked with. Then why aren't you speaking out? Why haven't you gone to the press?" Kwan looked down at his coffee. "Because I was complicit in what happened at Technovate. So why are you helping now?" "Guilt." Nia stared at the small device. "Because Graves has friends in high places. I tried reporting this through official channels and was shut down." "What's that?" "Public sympathy." Nia picked up the thumb drive, turning it over in her fingers. Kwan hesitated. "He's been advised to avoid contact with anyone connected to his business interests until this is sorted out." The realization that Julian was deliberately avoiding her stung, even if she understood the logic. "Where is he?" "I can't tell you that." As he turned to leave, Nia called after him. Kwan smiled sadly. "You don't. But ask yourself this. What would Julian do in your position?" After he left, Nia sat for a long time, the thumb drive clutched in her hand. Her head was spinning with everything she'd learned. She needed to see what was on the drive. Back at her house, Nia plugged the thumb drive into her laptop. It contained dozens of files, financial records, emails, legal documents. Merger? What merger? Digging deeper, she found documents indicating that Reyes Technologies was being positioned for acquisition by a larger company, a company that appeared to be controlled by Martin Graves through a complex web of shell corporations. The picture became clearer as Nia read. Graves wanted Julian's company for its innovative healthcare software, and Healing Wheels had become collateral damage in this corporate war. It was ruthless and effective. But now Nia had evidence that could expose the truth. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Warily, she answered. "Ms. Laurent?" Nia's heart raced. Am I under investigation? At this time, we're just gathering information, the detective said smoothly. I'll need to consult with a lawyer first, Nia said, remembering Julian's advice about always having legal representation in business matters. Of course, we'll expect to hear from your attorney by tomorrow to schedule a time. The detective paused. After the call ended, Nia sat frozen, staring at the thumb drive. She needed help, legal help. Nia called Marcus, who had a cousin who worked at a prestigious law firm. This is quite a situation, Eleanor said after Nia explained everything and showed her the contents of the drive. If these documents are authentic, they prove a conspiracy against Mr. Reyes, but that's a big if. We need to verify them before taking any action. How do we do that? But Ms. Laurent, you need to understand the risk. If you publicly support Julian Reyes and these documents turn out to be falsified, you could face serious legal consequences, not to mention what it would do to your organization's reputation. I have contacts who can help, digital forensics experts. Eleanor leaned forward. And if I do nothing, Nia asked, his reputation and the work you're doing together would likely end. Then Mr. Reyes fights this battle alone. He may lose his company. The choice seemed impossible. Risk everything on evidence she couldn't verify, or abandon Julian when he needed her most. Not the police, not the press, not even your closest friends. The fewer people who know about this, the better. What would you do? Nia asked softly. Trying to protect you, miss you, trust no one until this is over. Jay. Eleanor's expression softened. Professionally, I'd advise caution. Wait for verification. Personally? Martin Graves and Victoria Caldwell conspired to frame Julian for fraud, to force him out of his company before a planned merger. She glanced at the photo on her desk of her family. For someone I loved, I'd fight with everything I had. Loved. The word echoed in Nia's mind. Did she love Julian? It's to create enough doubt about the allegations that Julian has room to maneuver. Eleanor handed Nia the statement. Once this is public, we'll approach the SEC and the FBI simultaneously with the evidence. Federal authorities are less likely to be under Graves's influence than local ones. If questioned, he can truthfully say he had no knowledge of your actions. They'd known each other such a short time, but in that time he'd shown her nothing but kindness, honesty, and support. He'd believed in her when others hadn't. He'd remembered a small act of kindness for 5 years and turned it into something that would help hundreds of people. Yes, she loved him, and she wouldn't let him face this alone. Nia's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters seeking more information, which she declined as Eleanor had advised. Healing Wheel's newly hired staff looked to her with uncertainty, wondering if their jobs were now at risk. We need to be strategic about how we use this information. Eleanor opened a folder on her desk. I've drafted a statement for you to release to the press. This was her fight now, her chance to help the man who had helped her, to show the same faith in him that he'd shown in her. The stars were bright in the clear New Orleans sky, and she found herself making a childish wish on the brightest one, a wish for Julian's safety, for justice to prevail for a future where they could build something beautiful together without shadows from the past. It expresses your complete confidence in Julian's integrity and reveals the existence of evidence proving his innocence, without specifying what that evidence is. Nia tensed, ready to go inside and lock the door if necessary. She touched his face gently. How did you know about the statement? How quickly can your experts verify these documents? Nia asked, not exactly keeping a low profile. Before she could decide, a car turned onto her street, headlights sweeping across them. But when he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. Give me 48 hours, Eleanor said. In the meantime, say nothing to anyone. Julian listened intently, his expression darkening when she mentioned Quan. As Nia left the law office, she felt a strange calm settle over her. The path ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but at least she was moving forward. Michael Quan was a vice president at Technovate, but not the CTO. And he's at least 20 years older than the man you described. Or was it a more elaborate trap, with some of the documents being genuine to lend credibility to others that weren't? Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number again, but this time she knew who it was before she read the message. "I'm sorry I disappeared." Tears pricked Nia's eyes as she typed her response. "I'm fighting for you. Stay safe. Nia couldn't help but reach out, tracing those lines with her fingertip. She stopped, backspaced, and simply wrote, "I'm here, always. They'll determine what's real and what isn't." "I can't remember. Everything's been chaos since the allegations broke." 2 days later, Nia sat in Eleanor's office again, listening as the attorney explained her findings. She slipped into bed beside him, and Julian immediately drew her into his arms, holding her close as if she might disappear. "I don't want to be alone tonight." "The documents are genuine," Eleanor said. "My experts confirmed it. The emails, the financial records, all of it." Relief flooded through Nia. "So we can clear his name. Whatever happens, I need you to know that." When they finally settled back down, Julian fell asleep almost immediately, the exhaustion of the past days catching up with him. She'd thrown herself fully into this fight for Julian, staking her reputation and possibly her freedom on his innocence. "You'll be safer than at a hotel. I love you too, Julian, and we're going to get through this, together." It's not that simple. Just as Nia was drifting off to sleep, Julian spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. Julian was still asleep, his arm draped protectively over Nia's waist. "Won't Graves just deny everything?" "Absolutely. But our goal isn't to convince him to confess." Nia read the statement carefully. It was powerful, unequivocal in its support of Julian, while maintaining a dignified tone that would reflect well on both her and Healing Wheels. "That was quite a show of support for someone you've known for what, a month?" "Okay, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're risking everything. Your reputation, Healing Wheels, maybe even your freedom, for a guy who might be playing you." But as she turned to leave the bedroom, Julian caught her hand. "He's being set up by the same man he exposed for fraud years ago." Zoe's expression softened. "Look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just care about you. This whole thing moved so fast. The money, the romance, now these allegations. It's a lot. Just tonight." Her eyes widened when she saw Nia in yesterday's clothes. "Long night? Hiding out from the law at his girlfriend's place? Bold move." She headed for the door, then paused. "I'm staying at Derek's tonight. Call me if you need anything, okay?" "What about Julian? Shouldn't we consult with him first?" Eleanor shook her head. "The less he knows about our strategy, the better, or they're building a stronger case against me." Julian took her hand. "Nia, I want you to be prepared. This could get worse before it gets better. The press is already connecting Healing Wheels to the allegations. Your donors might get nervous." It felt wrong to make such a momentous decision without Julian's input, but Nia understood the logic. "Okay," Nia said, taking a deep breath. "Let's do it." The statement was released that afternoon. By evening, it was the lead story on local news and trending on social media nationwide. This was happening faster than she'd expected. As the agent settled on the couch, Nia steeled herself for what was coming. He stood and pulled Nia to her feet, wrapping his arms around her, not just because she loved him, but because it was the right thing to do. And some people were worth fighting for, no matter the risk. Just as he had done the right thing at Technovate, even when it cost him everything. "Thank you for believing in me, for fighting for me. No one's ever done that before." The reaction was mixed. Some praised Nia's loyalty, others questioned her judgment in standing by an accused fraudster. But Nia remained resolute. Eleanor's team had already delivered the evidence to federal authorities, and preliminary feedback suggested they were taking it seriously. She had just made a fresh pot of coffee when someone knocked on the door. As midnight approached, Nia sat on her porch swing, exhausted but unable to sleep. That car pulled up in front of her house, a nondescript sedan with tinted windows. Then the back door opened, and Julian stepped out. He looked tired, his clothes rumpled, his usually neat hair tousled. Nia ran down the steps and into his arms. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair, neither speaking for a long moment. "You shouldn't be here," she finally whispered. "It's not safe." "I had to see you," Julian said, drawing back to look at her. "After what you did today." "Nia, You risked everything for me. Like you did for me. It's all over the news. Local non-profit director defends embattled tech CEO. He smiled wryly. I couldn't just stand by and watch them destroy you, not when I knew the truth. Julian's expression grew serious. How did you know? About Graves and Victoria? Nia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal about Kwan and the thumb drive. We should go inside, Julian said, suddenly alert. It's not safe out here. In the living room, Nia told Julian everything. Her meeting with Michael Kwan, the evidence on the thumb drive, her consultation with Eleanor Washington. Michael Kwan, he repeated. You're sure that was his name? Yes, he said he was the CTO at Technovate. Julian shook his head. A chill ran down Nia's spine. Then who did I meet? I don't know, but whoever he is, he gave you authentic documents that could help clear my name. The question is why. They spent the next hour going over possibilities. Could the man be a disgruntled employee of Graves? Someone with a personal vendetta? It doesn't matter now, Julian said finally. The evidence is with the FBI. He looked so tired, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines of strain around his mouth. You should rest, she said softly. When was the last time you slept? Julian caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. Stay here tonight, Nia said impulsively. Julian hesitated. I don't want to put you at risk. I'm already in this, Julian. All the way. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Nia made up the couch for him, insisting he take her bed. Stay, he said softly. Just to sleep. The vulnerability in his voice melted any hesitation Nia might have felt. I've missed you, he murmured against her hair. I've missed you too. They lay in silence for a while, the rhythm of their breathing synchronizing. I love you, Nia. Nia turned in his arms to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the darkness. He kissed her then, a kiss full of tenderness and promise. But Nia lay awake a little longer, listening to his steady breathing and wondering what tomorrow would bring. She had to be right about him. The alternative was unthinkable. Morning came too soon, with sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of Zoe moving around in the kitchen. Carefully, she extricated herself and went to intercept her roommate before she could burst in. Morning, Zoe said, looking up from her coffee. Julian's here, Nia said in a low voice. He showed up late last night. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. He's not hiding, he just needed somewhere safe to stay. Uh-huh, Zoe sipped her coffee. And your statement yesterday? I know what I'm doing, Zoe. Do you? Nia bristled. Julian isn't playing me. So he says. I know it looks crazy from the outside, but I trust him, Zoe, and I have evidence that proves he's innocent. I hope you're right, Zoe said, grabbing her purse, for both your sakes. After Zoe left, Nia returned to the bedroom to find Julian awake, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your roommate doesn't approve of me, he said with a wry smile. She's just protective. Nia sat beside him. What's the plan for today? Julian ran a hand through his hair. I need to meet with my lawyers. The FBI wants to interview me this afternoon. That's good, right? They must be taking the evidence seriously. Maybe. Let them, Nia said firmly. We have the truth on our side. Julian's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. It's my lawyer. I need to go. Get used to it, Nia said, smiling up at him. I'm not going anywhere. After Julian left, Nia showered and dressed for the day. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in a business suit holding a badge. FBI. Taking a deep breath, Nia opened the door. Ms. Laurent, I'm Special Agent Diana Torres. I'd like to ask you some questions about Julian Reyes and the evidence you provided to our office. Nia stepped aside to let her in, her mind racing. Whatever it took, she would protect Julian. Some battles were worth fighting no matter the price. Julian. Reyes was both. Victoria Caldwell paced the floor of her hotel suite, phone pressed to her ear. What do you mean they have evidence? What evidence? Emails, financial records, enough to expose the whole operation if it's verified. Martin Graves' voice was cold with fury. That's impossible. Those communications were encrypted. Well, someone decrypted them, and now the FBI is involved. And the source. Victoria's mind raced. It had to be Michael. He's the only one who had access to all of it. Michael is loyal, Graves said, though he sounded less certain than his words implied. He always was too clever for his own good. The merger is off the table now. Julian will never sell to you after this. He knows what would happen if he betrayed us. Then who? Victoria stopped pacing, a thought occurring to her. Unless... Julian figured it out. It doesn't matter who leaked it. What matters is containing the damage. Graves' voice hardened. We need to discredit the evidence. How? The FBI has it now. We have friends at the Bureau. They'll help delay any investigation while we implement the final phase of our plan. Victoria frowned, and hoped that when the dust settled, there would be something left of her relationship with Julian to salvage. He won't have a choice, Graves said coldly. Not when we're done with him. What are you planning, Martin, and her relationship with Michael Kwan, or whoever he really was? The less you know, the better. Just be ready to move quickly when I give the word. A substantial donation to your organization, followed by your public defense of a man facing serious fraud allegations. Some might call that a conflict of interest. Torres raised an eyebrow. You have to admit, it's suspicious. Julian had always been like a son to her, despite their differences. One last question, where is Julian Reyes now? And Nia Laurent seemed like a good person who truly cared for him. Martin's vendetta against Julian had always seemed excessive to her, a disproportionate response to what had happened at Technovate. But she'd gone along with it, partly out of loyalty to Graves, partly for the promised financial reward. After Graves hung up, Victoria stared out the window at the New Orleans skyline, a sense of unease growing within her. Now, though, she wondered if she had miscalculated. Reputational damage could be permanent, especially for a small non-profit like Healing Wheels. Once Julian's name is cleared, they'll come back. She tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Julian had left hours ago, and she had no idea where he was meeting his lawyers. It would be better for everyone if he came in voluntarily. The older woman looked haggard, her usual impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. Expecting Zoe, who might have forgotten her keys, Nia opened the door without checking first. Was it too late to back out? To warn them? Victoria picked up her phone again, hesitated, then set it down. No, she was in too deep. The only way out was through. Whatever Graves was planning, she would have to see it through to the end. Somehow, though, she doubted it. I'm here to warn him, to warn both of you. Nia went to the Healing Wheels office, where the staff greeted her with a mixture of concern and support. 2 donors had already called to withdraw their pledges, citing the controversy surrounding Julian's donation. I never should have gotten involved with his schemes, but he promised me a significant stake in the merged company if I helped pressure Julian to sell. Are you saying he wants to harm Julian physically? For years, I thought that meant guiding his career, his business decisions. I thought I knew what was best for him. She laughed bitterly. How arrogant that seems now. Martin Graves is planning something much worse. I don't know exactly what, but Nia asked. Tell them everything you know about Graves's plans. Then we have to hope they act on it quickly, before Graves makes his next move. If I move against him openly, I lose any chance of finding out what he's planning next. Victoria leaned forward. That's why I need your help. You have access to the evidence Julian needs to clear his name, and you have his trust. She looked up at Nia, real fear in her eyes. He used the phrase, permanent solution. Special Agent Diana Torres was thorough in her questioning. For over 2 hours, she grilled Nia about Julian, the evidence. You understand how this looks, Ms. Laurent, Torres said, her expression neutral. Julian stood in the doorway, his expression darkening when he saw Victoria. I'm not defending Julian because of the donation, Nia said firmly. I'm defending him because he's innocent, based on evidence provided by a man you can't identify, claiming to be someone he's not. A bit late for warnings, isn't it, Victoria? After you helped him try to destroy me. I made a mistake, Julian, a terrible one, but I'm trying to make it right. And I can't let Graves hurt you, even if it means turning against him. I don't trust her. he murmured against her hair. She could be playing both sides. The evidence speaks for itself. Have your experts examined it yet? My lawyers are working on a counter-offensive, a lawsuit against Graves for defamation, with the evidence you provided as the foundation, but it will take time. He turned back to Victoria. If you really want to help, find out what Graves is planning. Then maybe, just maybe, I'll consider forgiving you. Healing Wheels is too important to be dragged down by my problems. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. Her voice softened. It reminded me of Julian's parents, just that he called it a permanent solution and that it's happening soon. As they talked, Nia noticed Julian repeatedly checking his phone, his expression growing more concerned each time. He was supposed to contact me after meeting with the SEC investigators today. Julian ran a hand through his hair. It's not like him to go silent, especially now. I'm not abandoning you or what we have. They had that same connection, that same light when they were together. Torres didn't answer directly. We're pursuing all leads. That's why I'm here. She closed her notebook. Nia hesitated. I don't know. It wasn't entirely a lie. He's been handling the company while I've been laying low. He said his name was Michael Kwan, but the description matches. Julian frowned at his phone. He knows everything about our financial records. If anyone can prove the fraud allegations are false, it's him. When repeated knocks on his door went unanswered, Julian used a spare key to enter, with Nia following close behind. Torres handed Nia her card. If he contacts you, please let him know we need to speak with him as soon as possible. After the agent left, Nia called Eleanor Washington to update her on the FBI visit. The attorney sounded troubled. They should be focusing on Graves, not Julian, Eleanor said. Something's not right. Let me make some calls. For one terrible moment, Nia thought he was dead. Then he groaned and lifted his head. Julian rushed to his friend's side, helping him sit up. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety. Was working, felt dizzy. Delivery came. We need to get him to a hospital, Julian said. Food and water. Thought it was from you. External drives. All the backup records. Michael gripped Julian's arm. Everything we need to prove your innocence, it's gone. Michael shook his head as if trying to clear it. Think someone drugged me. It's going to be okay, Marcus assured her. Nia smiled gratefully, though she wasn't so certain. By evening, Nia was exhausted. She checked her phone constantly for messages from Julian, but there were none. Michael needed medical attention, and the theft needed to be reported. In a hidden compartment, where are you? She whispered to the empty room. Without those records, they had only the copies Nia had given to the FBI. Copies that Graves might already be working to discredit or suppress. Just as she was about to try calling again, her doorbell rang. Victoria Caldwell stood on her porch. Nia's first instinct was to slam the door, but something in Victoria's expression stopped her. May I come in? Victoria asked, her voice subdued. It's important. Against her better judgment, Nia stepped aside. 5 minutes. Victoria entered, glancing around the modest living room. Is Julian here? No, and if you're looking for him, you're the last person I'd tell. Victoria sighed, sinking onto the couch as if her legs could no longer support her. I'm not here to find him. Nia remained standing, arms crossed. Warn us about what? The smear campaign you helped orchestrate? That was just the beginning. Victoria's hands twisted in her lap. A chill ran down Nia's spine. I don't know. Maybe. Martin has changed since prison. He's harder, more ruthless. Victoria shook her head. Why are you telling me this now? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because I watched you at the gala. The way you looked at Julian, the way he looked at you. Nia sat down across from Victoria, still wary but listening. I promised Elaine, Julian's mother, that I would look out for him if anything happened to her, Victoria continued. If you want to help Julian, why not go to the FBI? I've considered it, but Martin has influence at the Bureau. I already gave the evidence to the FBI. It's out of my hands now. Victoria's face fell. The sound of a key in the lock made both women turn. Julian shook his head. Not yet. Victoria's right about one thing. Graves has friends at the Bureau. We need to be careful about who we trust. Victoria nodded. relief crossing her features. "I'll do whatever it takes." After she left, Julian pulled Nia into his arms, holding her tightly. What if she's telling the truth? What if Graves is planning something dangerous? Julian drew back to look at her. "Then we need to be ready." "Time we might not have," Nia said quietly. "I know." Julian cupped her face gently. "Which is why I think you should distance yourself from me until this is resolved." "No." Nia's response was immediate and firm. "We're in this together." Julian's eyes softened with emotion. "Lucky for you," Nia said, managing a small smile. They spent the evening reviewing their options, eventually deciding to meet with Eleanor Washington the next day to develop a more aggressive strategy. "What is it?" she finally asked. "I can't reach Michael." "Michael who? Not Quan?" "No, Michael Chen, my CFO and closest friend." A horrible thought struck Nia. "Julian, what does Michael look like?" "Mid-30s, Asian American, about my height." "Why?" Nia's heart raced. "I think he's the one who gave me the evidence." Julian's eyes widened. That would explain how he got those documents. But why use a false name? Maybe he was protecting himself, or you. Nia squeezed Julian's hand. "If he hasn't contacted you, we need to find him." Julian was already on his feet. "Now." Michael Chen lived in a sleek apartment building in the Garden District. The apartment was immaculate and silent. Too silent. "Michael," Julian called, moving through the rooms. "Are you here?" They found him in the home office, slumped over his desk. "Julian!" Michael's voice was slurred, his eyes unfocused. "How did you get in? What happened?" "Don't know." Nia scanned the room, noticing an open bottle of water on the desk. "Did you drink that?" Michael nodded weakly. Julian and Nia exchanged alarmed looks. "No hospital," Michael protested. "They took it." "Took what?" Julian asked. "My laptop. The implications were devastating." "We need to call Agent Torres," Nia said. "This is attempted murder." Julian helped Michael to the couch while Nia made the call. Torres answered on the second ring. "Ms. Laurent, I was just about to call you. We need to speak with Julian Reyes immediately. Someone just drugged his CFO and stole critical evidence," Nia said. "We need help." There was a pause. "Where are you now?" Nia hesitated, then gave the address. Something in Torres's tone made her uneasy, but they had no choice. While they waited for Torres, Julian searched the apartment for anything the intruders might have missed. Of Michael's desk, he found a single thumb drive. "Smart man," Julian said, a grim smile crossing his face. "Always have a backup your enemies don't know about." When Torres arrived 20 minutes later, she brought paramedics for Michael and a team of agents who immediately began processing the apartment as a crime scene. "Mr. Reyes," Torres said, her expression stern, "you've been difficult to find." "I've been trying to clear my name," Julian replied, "which is harder to do when someone is actively trying to frame me." Torres nodded to the thumb drive in Julian's hand. "Is that evidence? If that drive contains evidence against him, I need to see it." "It might be." Julian held it protectively. "But given what just happened to Michael, I'm reluctant to hand it over, until I know it will be properly secured." Torres studied him for a moment. "Mr. Reyes, I've been investigating Martin Graves for 6 months, long before these allegations against you surfaced." Julian and Nia exchanged surprised looks. "You're already investigating Graves?" Nia asked. "For securities fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. In the meantime, both of you should come with me. It's not safe here." Torres lowered her voice. "And now, apparently, attempted murder. Financial records proving the allegations against me were fabricated, plus evidence of Graves's involvement. He's sending people to Michael's apartment now. My investigation has been confidential, which is why I couldn't tell you earlier, Ms. Laurent. He's feeding information to a reporter at the Times-Picayune. It'll be in tomorrow's paper, unless you stop it. We can get an injunction against the paper, but we need specifics. Names, times, what information they have." Relief washed over Nia. Torres wasn't compromised by Graves, after all. She was building a case against him. Julian handed over the thumb drive. "Everything you need should be on here. She's been Graves' right hand through all of this. Torres took it carefully. This could be the missing piece we need. She provided detailed information about Graves's plans, including the name of the reporter he'd contacted, and copies of the falsified financial records he'd created to implicate Nia in misusing donation funds. As they followed Torres out, Julian's phone rang. Victoria. With Victoria's testimony and the evidence you provided, he's looking at a long sentence this time. Julian, where are you? Her voice was urgent. Graves knows about the backup drive. We're already here, Julian said. With the FBI, they know about Graves. Victoria's relief was audible. Thank God. Listen, there's more. Graves is desperate. I can never thank you enough for standing by me through all of this. You would have done the same for me. Your company's stock will take a hit, but it should recover once the full story comes out. 5 years ago, you showed kindness to a stranger at his lowest point. That one act changed the course of my life. It gave me hope when I had none, purpose when I was lost. Torres smiled slightly. You might even come out looking like a hero. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But if these past days have taught me anything, it's that when you find someone who fights for you, who believes in you no matter what, you hold on to them with everything you have. Again, he's planning to target Healing Wheels next, some kind of manufactured scandal involving the use of donation funds. He wants to destroy both of you. Nia Laurent, will you marry me? When? Tonight. Julian relayed this to Torres, who immediately began making calls. Their journey had been unconventional, marked by extraordinary circumstances, but the foundation, that moment of kindness in a late-night cafe, was pure and true. They had decided to keep their engagement quiet for now, letting this day be solely about Healing Wheels. The emerald ring hung on a chain around Nia's neck, hidden beneath her blouse but close to her heart. Sometimes it changes lives, not just the life of the person you help, but your own as well. But when I saw someone in need, I didn't hesitate to help. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was just a meal offered with kindness and without expectation. Victoria can help with that, Julian said. At Zoe, who had finally warmed to Julian after seeing how deeply he loved her friend, at the community members whose lives were being transformed by the services Healing Wheels provided. Today I hope I'm reminding him of the same. Bring her in, Torres ordered. Now. But I also want to share a simple truth that lies at the heart of everything we do. Words aren't enough. Nia squeezed his hands. You changed my life, Julian Reyes. Not with your money or your influence, but with your heart, your integrity, your unwavering belief in me and what I'm trying to build. About how much I love you and how grateful I am that you found me again. And I can't wait to build a life with you. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and wiping away tears. Donations poured in from across the country, allowing Nia to expand her services beyond her wildest expectations. But instead of returning to her seat, she walked straight to the back of the crowd, to Julian. The expanded fleet of mobile wellness vans gleamed in the sun, each emblazoned with the organization's new logo. 5 years ago, you gave me a receipt for a meal. Today, I finally understand what I was really receiving. A crowd of supporters, donors, and community members filled the lot of the community center, which would soon be replaced by the permanent facility now under construction. The next 12 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Victoria arrived at the FBI field office, visibly nervous but determined. But he had invited her to the relaunch, a small olive branch that meant more to her than he could know. After a brief word to Nia, he made his way over. And sometimes those ripples return to us as waves of joy, connection, and love that transform our lives in ways we never could have imagined. Torres moved quickly, securing an emergency injunction against the Times-Picayune, while simultaneously organizing a raid on Graves's New Orleans hotel suite. What you and Nia have built here, it's remarkable. The receipt was love, Nia, pure and simple, and it's the only currency that truly matters. Julian, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance we could start over? Not as business associates or even as godmother and godson, just as family. He met Victoria's eyes. It won't be easy or quick, but yes, I think we can try. By dawn, Martin Graves was in custody, and Julian and Nia were sitting in a conference room at the FBI office, exhausted but relieved. The path ahead was bright with promise, not just for Healing Wheels, but for the life they would build together, founded on that first simple act of kindness in a late-night cafe. Regret for the pain she'd caused, pride in the man Julian had become, hope for the future they would build together. "It's really over?" Nia asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Thank you." And in the end, that was all that mattered. The end. That's more than I deserve. Her reputation in business circles was in tatters. Many of her former associates had cut ties, but for the first time in years she felt at peace with herself. Sometimes the deepest connections form when we're at our most vulnerable, and sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as simple acts of kindness, their true value only revealed with the passage of time, and perhaps something even stronger would emerge from the ashes of what had been broken. "The immediate threat, yes," Torres said. "Graves will face multiple federal charges." "What about the allegations against me?" Julian asked. "Strong, compassionate, stubborn as hell. We'll issue a statement clearing you by the end of the day." After Torres left them alone, Julian took Nia's hand. "You don't have to thank me," Nia said softly, in a heartbeat. Julian's expression grew serious. "But this whole experience has made me think about what's really important. Life is unpredictable, precious." Nia nodded, sensing where this was going. "Julian, let me finish," he said gently. Julian slid from his chair to one knee, still holding Nia's hand. Tears filled Nia's eyes as Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been carrying this around for a week, waiting for the right moment," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by small diamonds. Through her tears, Nia laughed. "You are proposing to me in an FBI conference room after the craziest week of our lives." Julian grinned. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," Nia said, her heart overflowing with love. "Of course it's a yes." As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, Nia felt a sense of rightness, of completion. Sometimes, Nia thought as Julian held her close, the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts of human connection. 3 months later, the grand relaunch of Healing Wheels was everything Nia had dreamed of and more. The scandal had actually brought unexpected benefits. Once Julian's name was cleared and Graves's plot exposed, media attention focused on Healing Wheels' mission. Julian stood at the back of the crowd, watching proudly as Nia approached the podium to speak. 5 years ago, Nia began, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd, "I was a struggling student with barely enough money to feed myself." Her eyes found Julian's, and a smile passed between them. "What I didn't know then was that kindness is never wasted. Sometimes it comes back to you in ways you could never imagine." Nia paused, looking out over the crowd, at Marcus and the other staff members who had stood by her through the crisis. "Today, as we relaunch Healing Wheels, I want to thank my team, our donors, and our community for believing in this vision." Nia's voice strengthened, filled with emotion and conviction. 5 years ago, someone reminded me that kindness is never wasted." As planned, Nia stepped down from the podium to thunderous applause. The audience fell silent, watching curiously as Nia reached Julian and took both his hands in hers. "I had a whole speech prepared," she said softly, for his ears alone. Julian's eyes were bright with emotion. But I realized something as I was standing up there. Around them, people began to whisper, some taking photos with their phones. Neither Nia nor Julian noticed. "I love you," Nia said simply. Julian pulled her close, kissing her tenderly, oblivious to the crowd's reaction, the gasps, the applause, the flashing cameras. "So much for keeping the engagement quiet," Julian murmured. Nia shrugged, her eyes dancing. "Some things are too beautiful to hide." As they turned to face the crowd, hands clasped, Julian leaned close to whisper in her ear. "And what was that?" Nia asked, her heart full. Julian's smile was tender, his eyes reflecting all the love in his heart. Together they walked back through the crowd, greeted by cheers and congratulations. A reminder that sometimes The smallest gestures create the greatest ripples. Victoria Caldwell stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Julian and Nia with a mixture of emotions. Her testimony against Graves had come at a cost. Julian had not fully forgiven her. That would take time. As the crowd began to disperse, Julian spotted her. "You came," he said, his tone neutral but not cold. "I wouldn't have missed it," Victoria replied. Julian nodded, looking back at Nia, who was surrounded by well-wishers. "She's remarkable." "Yes, she is," Victoria hesitated. Julian was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, Victoria. You betrayed my trust in a profound way." "I understand," she said, trying to hide her disappointment. "But," Julian continued, "my mother always believed in second chances, and Nia has taught me the power of forgiveness." Tears threatened, but Victoria blinked them back. Julian's expression softened slightly. "Everyone deserves a chance to make things right, even you." As he turned to rejoin Nia, Victoria called after him, "She would have loved Nia, you know, your mother." Julian looked back, a genuine smile crossing his face. "I know, they're a lot alike." Victoria laughed, the sound rusty but real. "God help you." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Julian said, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, Victoria believed that everything might truly be all right. Not perfect, not immediately, but in time, with effort and goodwill, the wounds would heal. The bridges would be rebuilt. Just as Julian and Nia had shown, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings arise from moments of crisis. The receipt was love. The end.